Howdy folks, Timber Drifter here. So I am currently in northeast Oklahoma. I'm sitting at a trailhead on some public hunting land around a reservoir. I'm looking out across a vast expanse of landscape with a highway running next to me here. And downhill over this way through the forest is a big lake, reservoir. I would turn the camera around and show you, but when I tested that earlier, it's so bright outside that it just washed the screen out. Couldn't see anything, so you'll just have to take my word for it. But it is pretty. And windy. So I just came back from a hike. This is the first time that I've been out on a hike since I've been here. I've been here about 2 weeks. Today is the February the 19th. So I've been here 2 weeks today, visiting my folks and other family members and a couple of friends in the area that I hadn't seen since, most of them since 2020 in the spring. First time I've done a real road trip or gone anywhere outside of northeastern Wisconsin since spring of 2020. It was quite a trip, but I've done a little bit of hitting junk shops and antique shops and things like that since I've been here. I'm not spending much money. The budget is tight. But there's an antique shop, several of them in a small town that I remember even as far back as high school. When I was in high school, I used to come down to that town and hit the antique shops. In fact, I bought my first pipe at one of those shops, which is no longer there. But there's one shop that I remember over the years always seems to have a few pipes in it, so I stopped there. And sure enough, it did. There was several racks of pipes and bowls full of pipes without stems and in various states of disrepair and things like that. And I did buy a couple, and I'll probably go back if I can catch the place open. They don't have regular hours. It's by appointment, or sometimes they're just occasionally open. So there's a couple other pipes I'd like to get. Anyway, I'll show you a couple of them I picked up, and I've cleaned them up now. They were both in fairly rough shape. This one is a George Jensen, or George Jensen probably, I don't know. I don't see that brand here hardly ever. I don't know that I've ever run across one that's actually stamped George Jensen, which this one is. George Jensen, the number 62. On this side it says made in Denmark. It's a very small, dainty little pipe with a very nice sandblast, very thin walls. It's so light I can barely detect that I have it in my hand, and I love that kind of pipe. For a size comparison, this is the Westchester made in England billiard that I regularly smoke. I'm trying to get those two lined up really. So it's actually quite small and thin. And also it says Danets, I'm not sure. Danets. I looked it up a little bit. I couldn't really find much information other than about George Jensen. And I initially thought the stem was acrylic, but I was filing out some teeth marks, chatter. I didn't take them all out. I took most of them out. And the powder that I filed off was brown. That's a black stem. So perhaps it is vulcanite of some variety. Although I'm not entirely sure what the material is. Anyway, it's in its present state an excellent smoker. I've been enjoying it. It had a very long stinger in it that went all the way into the bottom of the bowl, through the draft hole into the bottom of the bowl with a little spoon shape, and it was one of those ribbed stingers with a tiny, tiny little hole that even my smallest pipe cleaners wouldn't fit through that that little groove in the stinger where it met the stem. And even after cleaning it, I could barely draw through it. So I pulled the stinger out, and it does smoke wonderfully without it. I'd say it improved it just about 100%. But I've been enjoying this one. It's a nice little pipe. I like these little dainty pipes. The other one I picked up, which I'm going to smoke now, I just cleaned this one up yesterday. It's one of those leather-wrapped pipes. It's not in great shape, and it was in much worse shape when I bought it. It had a lot of cake in the bowl, and the cake was actually much harder than the Meerschaum, so I had to be very careful in removing it. And the Meerschaum is a little bit crumbly. After I'd cleaned it up, I actually waxed the top of it, which seemed to help. But this was all black lava around the top, much how my pipes are. The stem was terribly oxidized and chipping. It's still not in great shape, but I did clean it up. It has the white giraffe there, and it says made in Tanganyika, which I don't think it's Tanzania now. I don't think it's been called Tanganyika since the mid-60s, but I'm not sure about that. I've not looked this up. It's just from memory. I believe Tanganyika was a colony of the United Kingdom and became independent sometime in the 60s, possibly with Zanzibar. I don't remember. That stuff is interesting to me, and I don't remember it clearly, so I really shouldn't be talking about it. Either way, it says Twiga, or TWIGA on this side. Leather-wrapped, Meerschaum lined. I believe this probably had a stinger in it, but it had been removed. It has a threaded aluminum tenon. And it took a good deal of cleaning to get those threads loosened up. And this is a solid piece. This doesn't pull out. I've had some other pipes that were set up like this, but the threaded bit was you could pull it out of the tenon. Anyway, I've never had one of these leather-wrapped pipes. In fact, I always thought they were kind of silly looking. So I've had the opportunity to buy them used over the years, but it just wasn't my style. But this one needed a lot of work, and I was looking for something to do, and I did kind of find it appealing. I treated the leather with a little bit of Neat's foot oil. I'll probably do another coat. The leather was incredibly dry. You could just scrape it with a thumbnail, just scrape the leather right off of it. So this pipe had obviously been sitting in a very dry place for a long time. So gonna pack this up with some Eric Stockeby 4th generation Twilight mixture, which is one of their bulk blends. I've had it for a while. I've been smoking it quite a bit recently. I've actually haven't looked this tobacco up. I know I did before I ordered it, but I haven't looked this tobacco up to see what it is. But I don't believe there's any burley in it. There's quite a bit of Perique. It smells, tastes, and looks like a Cornell and Diehl blend. So I'm thinking Cornell and Diehl must be the blender for 4th generation. I could be wrong about that also. So I really haven't looked into it. But it's kind of hard to mistake that Cornell and Diehl flavor and cut when you're familiar with it. I'll probably find out it's made by some German company. I'm pretty sure it's Cornell and Diehl. It tastes very much like Orion's Arrow to me, so I think it's Virginia, Oriental, and Perique. It tastes very much like Orion's Arrow with some kind of sugar topping, perhaps honey. It sort of smells like honey in the bag. The draw is a little restricted on this pipe, but it's not terrible. whatever it is, I like this blend. I think if I had this or Orion's Arrow, I would be plenty happy to just have one of them. Yeah, tastes very clean. So it was one of those deals where I used alcohol, grain alcohol, and just kept running pipe cleaners through it until they came out clean and let it sit for a day and dry out. I used 400 grit sandpaper on the inside of the bowl after I scraped most of the cake out. I actually didn't realize this was a meerschaum lined pipe when I bought it. This was all black up here. There's a bit of a ghost there. Tasted clean initially, but once it's warmed up, it does have a bit of a ghost, which I think is probably velvet or something similar, which is fine. So yeah, I've been staying with my folks. My dad had a surgery scheduled for his shoulder, so I wanted to be here for that, and also stick around as long as I could and help him kind of pick up the slack for him being down for potentially 6 weeks. I don't know that I'll be here that long. I'll be working on a cranberry farm up where I live in northeastern Wisconsin this year, so I'm kind of watching the weather and waiting to hear from my boss there when I need to head back up for getting the sprinkler pipes out in spring. It's kind of a touchy transition zone. The cranberry farms are flooded over winter. Once it's warmed up enough that you can't really keep ice on, you need to get the water out of the cranberry beds and get the sprinkler pipes out to protect the cranberries from frost pretty much right after that. So it's one of those, like, needs to all get done pretty quick. So I'm watching the weather up there and seeing how it's going. But it was a hell of a trip down here. It should take about 13 and a half to 14 hours the way that I chose to drove, but I was actually on the road for 20. And I was enjoying the road trip. It was fun. Mostly fun. Kind of got into the groove of filling up the tank every half a tank of gas. I'd stop, get a 20-ounce cup of coffee or a 24-ounce cup of coffee and a tall water bottle and fill up and head out again and smoke a couple of 2-3 pipes or a fat cigar every half a tank of gas. And I just, other than stopping to gas up, I just drove it straight through 20 hours. Part of the reason it took that long is because I took a couple of detours, one that I meant to and one that I didn't. I wanted to check out some areas down in kind of southern Wisconsin on the west side. A good friend of mine that died a few years back, he was always telling me about how cool that area was when he lived there in the 70s, and I just wanted to drive through some of the little highways and back roads there. Down in the area of Merrimack and Black Earth, and there's a number of other cool little towns there. I just kind of toured the area as I was passing through. And it is neat. It's all just rolling hills and ridges and muddy farmland this time of year with lots of old houses. It is nice. I can see why he liked it. And I entered Iowa near Dubuque. And coming down a long hill after that with steep sides, it was a cut-in highway. I was behind a semi, not that many cars on the road. I was behind a semi, and another one passed me, and then that other semi, and I noticed his trailer was starting to wobble, and when he got in, which is when I hit the brakes, I just took it off a cruise, and as he got in front of that other semi, his trailer started doing this, and then just this, and then just all over the road, and he ended up turning sideways, sliding, popping a couple of his tires with his truck facing back this toward me and the trailer across the road. The other semi was able to zip past him on the shoulder, but by the time I got close to him, I was hard on my brakes and ended up stopping about probably 10 foot from the rear axle of his trailer. So I pretty much smoked my front brakes. And they're new. Back brakes seem fine. The front brakes are a little grindy and squeaky now. But that trucker was able to do a 50-point turn and get his vehicle onto the shoulder to let the other traffic by. And I think I was a little worked up after that. And being dyslexic, which is the only excuse I can come up with for my mistake, I needed to head for Des Moines, which is straight west across the state, and instead I headed for some other town that started with a D, which I can't think of the name of right now. Quad Cities area. It was dark by that point. And I'm not using the navigation on the phone, and I'm only using maps and my sense of direction because I'm wanting that to work rather than relying on GPS and phones and a robot lady yelling instructions at me. So my sense of direction did work. I kept thinking that I was heading in the wrong direction. And so eventually I came into a town, a large town, city, really small city, with no sign indicating what the city was, and now I'm in city traffic at the end of rush hour, I suppose, not recognizing any of the highways that I was passing. And I did pass a sign that said Des Moines, and I thought, okay, I'm definitely in the wrong direction. So I ended up stopping in a park down by a river, and actually getting my compass out to figure out what direction I was actually in. And okay, I must be south of where I think I am, or thought I was. But I still didn't know what city I was in so that I could figure out on the map to get out of there. And there were a couple of raccoon-looking individuals, longish hair and beards, scruffy beards, pretty dirty, ratty-looking clothing. They came out of the bushes squabbling over what I'm fairly certain was a baggie of dust. So they were living that lifestyle, I believe, but they came toward me and asked to bum a cigarette, which I didn't have. I was standing there smoking a pipe, and asked me if I needed anything, by which I imagine they were talking about drugs. And I said, yeah, I need to know what town I'm in. And they both started laughing. And I said, no, seriously, what town is this? So they told me, and I was able to redirect and head toward Des Moines. I rely on my fellow humans for directions when I refuse to use this thing. What did I do with my pipe tamper? So from Des Moines to Kansas City, it's a long drive, and I drove all of it at night. And I drive 10 miles an hour under the speed limit on the highway, typically, because this vehicle is not that stable at high speeds, and I'm used to 55 miles an hour where I live, not 70. So I was driving 60. Plus, I get a lot better gas mileage at 60 than I do at 65 or higher. There weren't that many people on the road. Pretty much had it to myself, other than a few trucks between Des Moines and Kansas City. And I'm not a good city driver, and I've had terrible experiences in Kansas City. That place is a tangled, hellish pretzel of highways and roads. And many of the signs are faded, or there's some kind of odd reflective surface that I can't read them until I'm right under them, which isn't enough time to get on the right exits, and it's terrible. I can't handle it very well. So I passed through that place well after midnight under the cover of darkness, driving about 45 miles an hour so as to not make mistakes too quickly. And I did fine. I had some strange sort of surreal moments driving through that lit up town with hardly any other traffic and no real noise. I was coming down off of a raised roadway, coming around a corner. I was still about the level of the tops of the houses nearby. And there was a bunch of flaming debris on the road, which didn't look like they came from an exploded vehicle or something like that. They actually appeared to be firewood. Very hot and on fire. I'm not quite sure what possibly could have caused that. But there were also a couple of fire trucks running the wrong way up that road toward that. So that was very odd. It was an odd experience to see flaming wooden debris on a raised roadway in Kansas City at 1:30 in the morning. And the fire trucks approaching the wrong direction down the highway with lights on but no sirens. I have no idea. I got out of there as soon as possible. And I drove from Kansas City to the border of Oklahoma in heavy fog. Most of the time I couldn't drive much faster than 40 miles an hour, so it was just a long, slow drive with the fog lights on through the night into the morning. Arrived at my parents' place just before 6 while it was still dark. To surprise my dad at the door. And I didn't listen to any music on the trip south, and I didn't listen to much. I listened to a few podcasts during the day when I was driving, but the rest of the time I was just in my head, just thinking about stuff. And driving that long without really stopping then for anything but gas, and then also just driving straight through the night and arriving at my final destination just before morning, it almost felt like some kind of journey of the mind as well as on the road. I felt different afterward, and I have since, almost like I'm not quite the same person as when I left. Spent a good deal of time reorienting my priorities while I was driving and what I want to do, what do I want to accomplish in the near future and the far future. So it was a good time for that. And it's been fun mixing it up with folks here in Oklahoma, wandering around, talking to people in various places, folks I don't know, chatting them up about things. Hearing what people are interested in here and what their concerns are, what they're happy about, what they're afraid of, how things are going here. Because it is quite different than northeastern Wisconsin in a lot of ways. Although not that different. It's still the U.S. and the Midwest. That preak is kind of hitting me. So the other thing I should say, because it's probably only my good internet friends that are still watching the video at this point, my phone hardly works here. Neither does my parents' phones. And I've talked to people around here, and most people's phones don't work all that well here. There's no Wi-Fi available that I've found. My parents don't have it. I don't know when I'm going to upload this video or where. But if you see me watching your videos, because I can occasionally watch videos, it does work sometimes. If you see me just leaving a couple of thumbs up, that means I tried to comment on your vehicle and your video, and it timed out before it put the comment up. But I can get away with just touching the phone, doing thumbs up, send. It seems to be if I'm touching the phone, it causes the phone to not work, which is how my phone used to work in northeastern Wisconsin before they got better towers up there, or more of them perhaps. So I'm in one of those kind of near dead zones in this area here. Basically, if I'm handling the phone, it doesn't work. It's questionable whether it will work otherwise. So if you see the 2 thumbs up, I wanted to comment, it just wouldn't go through. But I did see SMR Randy and also Will Bill talking about knives. A couple other people too. So Will Bill was talking about his K-bar, so I figured I'd show you mine. I've actually got a couple of K-bars. This is the one that I use. Obviously, this isn't the original sheath, but it does fit it. I bought this, I'm not sure when, but probably 2007 or 8. I remember where I bought it, just not quite when. It was a citywide rummage sale, and I believe I paid $5 for it. It was in terrible shape. I cleaned it up. This side doesn't have any finish left on it. It is the leather washer handle. It doesn't have the peen tang, it's the flat tang, but it is a USN Mark II Camillus. This is my vehicle knife. I used this knife for a long time before I moved on to other things as my just outdoor knife that it was always in my hunting gear. I'd throw it on my belt when I was hitting the woods. It's a good knife. It's held up well for me. It is sharpened here, which I think is probably illegal in Oklahoma, if I remember correctly. But I haven't checked the laws in a long time. But this is the one it's just my vehicle knife now. I use other things. I'd have to check, but if I remember correctly, that one was a World War II issue it has the reconditioning marks on it. So it was probably issued again either in Korea or Vietnam, I'm not sure. By reconditioning marks, actually, I'll show you that quick. It's the, can you see that drop of paint? I was told by a guy who used to do it in the early 60s that was the reconditioning mark. After they'd gone through the knife, they'd put a drop of paint on the handle. It's a silverish paint, and it also has had the guard peens down. They used to do that to tighten up the handle. When the leather would dry out, it would get a little bit loose, and if you knocked the guard down on either end a little bit, it would tighten that back up, smash this top down. That's what he told me, and he was a guy that used to take care of that kind of thing, so I tend to go with his opinion. Anyway, it's a solid knife, and I like it. I think Camillus made the best K-bars. I've got a number of other ones. Anyway, as I said, I don't know how long I'm going to be here, so my budget is very limited, so I don't know that I will be meeting up with anyone. Anyway, 30 minutes. Y'all take care. Get outside.